Today we're here with Stu Gower from Adidas, and Stu works across brands and athlete marketing. Thank you so much for coming in, man, on a Friday afternoon before a long weekend.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hell yeah. And man, we're super excited to have you on because not only have you worked for some amazing brands, you've also created or been part of the creation of some of the most exciting marketing campaigns in the sports realm. And so just give everyone listening just a bit of background of your journey so far.
Yeah, so I've been working in sports marketing for probably about 12 years or so. Came out of university, went straight into, I didn't go straight into working in it. I sort of was an intern for about a year just working on training expenses in a sports publication. From there, went to do some marketing coordinator type work for Puma, particularly within the golf area, which was a nice sort of entry point into that world. From there, went over to Adidas in Germany, which was sort of amazing, really. I never thought I'd leave London, and ended up going into a small city in Germany and working at the HQ there, which was amazing. Did a couple of years there, worked across some amazing tournaments, athletes, etc. Worked particularly within the global football team. So for me, that's like my passion. It's what I love. And did that for a couple of years and then came to America. So I moved in 2019, which was like 6 months before COVID, which is mad.
Damn.
Yeah.
As if coming to New York's not hard enough.
It was crazy just in terms of...
Were you here or in...
I was here, so I stayed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I had like an amazing 3 months into New York life, lived in Lower East Side, was like, this is amazing, this is great. Came back after Christmas. And sort of got shut down, which was really interesting as well, right? We had to sort of start coming up with marketing concepts to utilize our portfolio of athletes and channels and infrastructure and all that stuff. So, crazy.
And what's your responsibilities now in the role that you're in?
I work within what we would say our brand marketing team. We have different disciplines in terms of where that role sits. I work a lot in terms of, I always like to define it as below the line marketing. So it's not so much always about in-store creative. It's more about how we're working with our talent and our partners to really drive, and products I should say, to really drive conversation, whether that's across sort of PR, social and digital platforms, to make sure we're sort of driving brand identity and making it, I almost would say cool, right? And resonating with people out in the world.
In that role, what's the balance of operations and creative?
It's hard to say a percentage, I'd say. We have some people in the team who work really in operations, right? And think about how everything's coming together from a project management standpoint. I sort of really focus on the stories that we can build out of and have on offer, which is amazing, right? Particularly from my side, it's what I sort of got into marketing for. I think that's where you sort of figure out you love marketing before you're in it.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
I think you love those things from yesteryear that
you know what's funny? I'd never even thought about that, even from my perspective. I never thought I was into advertising. I never grew up. I was a music producer and then got into creating videos and then, knew I wanted a team and knew I wanted to create things and build something. But now that you've said that, I never knew that I was going to be wanting to tell the stories of brands.
It's crazy. You think about the things that you remember and I remember one of the best adverts ever. I think in football, universally is the Brazil one from the World Cup in '98, and I will remember those things forever. Or the stuff they did with Tiger Woods from a Nike perspective, or Adidas is impossible is nothing. There's so much of that stuff that I feel defined a generation of people who love sports and everything that sits around it. And, I think I love those and what it meant before you get into sort of working for Adidas or whatever.
Yep. And when did marketing really become a focus for you?
I did journalism at uni, so I never really knew what I wanted to do when I was leaving school. What I used to love magazines and covers and all of that type of stuff. So I used to collect those programs from football matches, all that stuff. And I loved the stories that you could tell within those spaces. So that sort of drove me to being I don't know really what I want to do, but I'll try journalism. I did that at uni.
In the back of your head, was it sports focus as well?
Yeah. It always was. Just trying to be in and around it, right, and tell the stories. I think even with football, it's an amazing microcosm for the real world and bringing communities together and the diversity of football fans and being a global game and all of that type of stuff. So I think the nature of being able to tell those stories, I wouldn't have given you that answer now, but it's something that I sort of back then I think even was interested in.
Absolutely. And now I know you've been a part of World Cup. What are some of the other huge events that
I've done I never really take these in that well, but I've done a couple of World Cups. So I did work-wise, I've done Moscow in 2018, Qatar in 2022.
Super Bowl.
Did Super Bowl in LA, which was great. Working on like Vegas now. Also done like Champions League finals and stuff.
And how does a project of that size and magnitude like come about?
That's like years in the making, but it supersedes probably just like working in the marketing team, right? So there's a whole partnerships and project team that will come together like 4 or so years out, maybe even earlier. And that's a lot of like, where are we going? What are we doing? How are we going to work within this space? And like the marketing comes and the partnerships come, and then the storytelling comes obviously like across the years, and it unfolds. And then you have like your real like activation periods, which will be in and around that period of time. But there's so many people who work across delivering that tournament or starting that tournament from a project standpoint.
Now, we already touched on this a bit, but your passion for soccer, how does that influence or affect your work these days?
I'd say it's good in terms of how much I'm sort of attached to it and how much I want to progress in that, if that makes sense. In some ways, it might not do me some favors sometimes because I really want to do and work within that space. It's also like one of the reasons I came here actually was, or New York specifically, or America, was because I believe in the growth of the game here. And I think it's like interesting to be here during this period of time. It's also, if you go to like Europe, the game's not really growing as much. It's such a huge proposition, whether it's in like the Premier League, La Liga, or whatever. Whereas here, it's genuinely a growing sport, and it's not the number one sport. That's a different experience coming from, you say you work in football back in Europe, everybody knows where you're at. Whereas here, there's NBA, NFL, NHL maybe, MLB. There's so much competition for sports. It's different. But with what's going on, particularly within soccer here, and then obviously World Cup coming, Copa America this year, I really believe in it, and I believe in the opportunity that sits around it. So whether it's making athletes sort of real local stars is something that I think is important, and how do you start to cross those over and build those platforms for them? Because one of the other things I realized when I first came here was America's massive, and to get someone in Dallas to care about a player in New York isn't not going to happen, right? Whereas if you can look at those states and those teams and start to build equity into them super locally, then like there's great opportunity there.
And what about building pride within that community, within that state?
And giving them platforms, right, to tell their stories and be representative of who they are. And I think when you look at some of like the censuses around like the diversity of America and like the dual nationality of people that sit within the country, that's representative through athletes and soccer players who are from those communities, right? So that gives them an opportunity to feel representative and feel seen. And I think that's an amazing part of where you can get to with football, having a conversation around the game, and then obviously working with people to feel like that.
And going back to how football's evolved over the last, say decade in North America, what have you noticed? I
think the game is becoming... I wouldn't say just like more commercial, but there's more eyeballs on it. I think when you have partners like Apple who sit in and around Major League Soccer, I think just the content and the output's going to be changing and developing. I think you get the likes of Leo coming in and playing in the league. Like, he's the biggest athlete in the world, right? And that picture of him going onto the Miami pitch with, I think it was Kim Kardashian, LeBron James, and everybody taking photos is like quite iconic, really. And I think that's just going to continue. I think America will get there as one of the leading leagues, right? It's just continually going to take time. And I know you were part of the Messi and Miami's activation here. What did you oversee through that? So we worked, again, there was like a huge team of people across all of this stuff, but my sort of key role within that main area was working with a creative, just as like the signing was getting announced. So we worked with a digital creative and team, so guys called, or his Instagram name's Cole, and he has like an agency called Iconic, and we really worked on like how we could leverage the story of Messi in the jersey as like a first person to showcase that, which was great. And they're like an amazing design team, and ours was more focused on Adidas's own storytelling, and then leveraging sort of like creative in store to showcase Leo in jerseys, because one of a real key thing for, I think, all brands is driving that association between brand and athlete. And that was really important from an Adidas standpoint. What role do you think marketing and storytelling through marketing has played in that growth? I think massively, and I think it will continue to be massive, if that makes sense. Not wanting to use the same word. I think, like, for me, what you really need to do is find athletes and clubs who are representative of those communities, which allows people to feel part of their journey and to feel like they can make the same, I guess, journey themselves, right? And become that player and be drawn into their story and feel familiarity with, cool, I come from this country or this community or this whatever. I can be that player and to showcase the game to what it is and really give people that platform. I think there's tons of opportunities to do that. And that's why I think, like, you see more of it in, like, the NBA, the NFL, college sports to an extent. Whereas, like, for me, it's sort of still untapped in MLS
100%,
players.
yeah.
And that's like an amazing opportunity.
Yeah. What do you think like set something up for success?
So I think that the originality of the story is like really, really important. I think it's almost I think back to the data point, it's the quality stuff, right? It's the feeling that you get when you see something. 100%. Like, it's hard to, and this is I think probably the trouble with everything is, like, particularly for me, I'm not, again, hugely like data driven, but I feel like you can watch something, you're like, I get it, it's amazing. Like, I get that excitement from a piece of content or a story that's being told, and it's the resonance that you get. And obviously you go through that and you look at those channels, right? And it's that engagement, it's how much do people then go through that system,
and it's how has it been executed correctly for the right platform as well. Like, are we ready to consume that 20-minute video in the right place?
And it's like, if you're telling a story about, and this goes back into, I think, how you report success, to your point, it's like, if you're telling a story that's super focused on communities in LA and the communities that support LA Galaxy and LAFC, it's like, okay, cool, well then the actual metrics that we should be looking at is how will we leaning into the responses that sit within those communities, or where is the engagement rate coming from, and things like that. And I think that's probably the development that's really important across all of those stories.
Now, where do you feel some brands are missing the mark on storytelling? More work can be done in this area?
I think a lot of, and just like generally, and I'll include probably Adidas in this a little bit, I think everybody continually focuses on, like, the return that you'll get from an investment or a product. I think the nature of storytelling and building audiences is to do it authentically, is to do it representatively, and to really tune into the individual. And I think we do have enough of that, but we just need a lot more of it as well at the same time. And to really focus on that. I think we live in a world now where data and analytics is so important, and consumer journeys, and they are fundamentally important, right? It'd be ignorant of me to say, it's not important to make sure all of those exist, because they are important. But I don't think sometimes enough time is spent on, like, what's the story? Like, what we looking at here, and how we gonna make that resonate with the audience, and not just like the audience who will follow Adidas on social channels or whatever. It's the person on the road. How do you become involved in their lives, and how do you become representative of those? How do you, like, lean into those conversations and do it from, like, an external version versus, this is Adidas, this is the story we're telling, and you believe this, right?
Outside of your work and outside of Adidas, is there any work that you've seen in the last, say, 5-10 years that you just truly admire?
So I've seen some amazing things. I think one of them I'm not going to get right, because I saw it maybe like just before Christmas, and I think it was a Michelob Ultra campaign, and it was where someone, I think, was communicating through Braille and commentating through Braille what was going on. That was, like, amazing. And it won an award at the Clio Awards. I'll find out what that is.
Was that Google?
No, I think it was Michelob Ultra.
Okay, gotcha.
But it was, like, incredible. Yeah. And I remember being sat there and I was like, wow, that's amazing.
I'm going to follow up with you, try and get a link to it.
Yeah, it was amazing. And then Corona did this thing for sportscasters in Mexico around the World Cup, and it was all about, I think there's so many different forms of language across Mexico, and they built a portfolio of sportscasters to be able to commentate on Mexico's games at the World Cup to the indigenous people in Mexico through their authentic language. And I just think that's amazing. I think, like, how we should be working also is to make sure that we're sort of communicating and working with communities and giving access, right, and being authentic in the work that we're doing and providing a purpose for change. And that was I found that just like sort of amazing, really.
Yeah. Now, a lot of your work obviously involves a lot of collaboration between agencies, production houses like us. How do you select people to work with, and what qualities do you value?
I think one, it's really good to see the work that people are sort of delivering as well. I think the variety of work is interesting as well. So you can find agencies and creatives who might work in a specific space, whether that's music or film, or it could be anything, right? That's like a really important one for me, I think. And also just when you talk to people, where do they see the point of the story, or the way in which you want to depict something or tell something? The other one is like enthusiasm and understanding of where you're going. We work with an agency as well called Goma, who is run by a guy called Ruda, and he is amazing at how he understands communities and the diversity that sits within communities. And we did a couple of pieces on LA, and he dived into all of the differences in the communities and the people that sits within those spaces and everything that builds into that. And it was almost like an amazing learning for me, if you know what I mean. And that's the stuff I think is great, is when people really can bring a point of view and a skill set to what the work that you want to do that sits outside of what people really do, right?
So you like, once you put an idea to an agency or creative, you'd like to see their interpretation of it, what their initial thoughts are of it.
Yeah, I also think like don't necessarily tell us something that you think Adidas would want to hear.
Right.
I think that's like an important part as well. There's obviously like in the brand world, there's brand guidelines and everything that sits in that space, but think outside of that, right? Think out how it transfers into the real world, because Adidas can create millions of things that could just service in something internally, but the actual nature and the art of what we want to do is to make sure that everybody else understands it and resonates with it, right?
What are the pros and cons of working with a brand the size of Adidas?
I'd say the pros is just like the access that you get and the space you get to go after projects and the experiences that you can have within that, right? So very fortunate to be in Adidas, and like it's World Cups this and it's something that and it's this athlete here and it's that there, and you obviously don't get that everywhere, and like that's a very special place to be right across the sphere, I think, and that's amazing. I think being a company the size of Adidas, there's also like, say there's 60,000 people across the globe. That's a lot of people, and with that can come process, bureaucracy, all of those things, and like I think that's just the nature of the beast, right? You won't go into a big organisation. I've not been to loads, but just the volume of people that just gets created.
Is there any advice that you'd give to people that are in your field now that are coming up?
Yeah, I'd say on my experience, I'd say I found it took me a year to get in from like say uni, doing an internship for like no money and then going to work at Puma, and I'd say like I must have applied for hundreds of jobs and got none. And I think that's like just, you have to keep going. I think that's really important. Getting used to that feedback cycle once you're in the system is great. Like when you are young, you are like green and you can be shaped, and that's a great place to be. So that feedback should be fine. And then the other one is like keep your own point of view, right? Like if you spend enough time in marketing or the world and content and stories and all of that space, like you trust your point of view and go after the things that you like, because you won't be the only person that likes them, and the more that you can do that, the more audiences will be interested, right?
And has there been any career challenges you faced that you found valuable now that you've navigated through? And
yeah, I'd say so. One, feedback is something that you have to get used to, or not, but like or not, but like
no, you don't.
or not, but in the I think when I was at the sports PR company before, the feedback I got was very direct and very to the point and very like, I wouldn't just say necessarily just harsh, but it was unfiltered. And like that has made it so much better for me now. But at the time, that was sometimes a hard thing as like a 25-year-old to get your head around a little bit.
Do you thank people now that have put you in that
position? Like Caroline, I have a really special relationship now, which is lovely. Caroline's amazing at what she does. She's amazing at what she does for a reason. And that's just trying to ingrain a skill set into you to reach the standards it is to be at a certain level, right? And I think those things are really important. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm so grateful for it now. But even my friends would say to me, like, you you never used to like that or feel comfortable with that, but they're older than me now or older than me, and they're like, but you never knew how good it was for you until like now, right? And it's those things that are quite special.
Mm-hmm. About shaping and getting harsh feedback when you're young, what kind of mindset do you recommend people be in when they are getting rejected from job after job or client after client? Is there something that keeps coming back?
Mine was just like, keep going. I literally was writing like emails and sending CVs all the time.
Do you think that's a DNA thing more than anything?
No,
rather than you learned that from the people around you?
I think I just a bit like, fuck it. Like,
what's the worst?
I can't, stopping's not going to get me anywhere. So
what's the alternative?
Stop. Yeah. And I try and like remember that sometimes when it's like, everyone has like days where they're not great, right? Or they don't want to do these things, but struggle or want to have a conversation with someone and can't get there or whatever. And I think you just got to keep going, which sounds really cliche, but it's hard.
Yeah. Is there anything you're working on at the moment that you're excited about?
So I'm working a lot on like soccer and what that's going to look like for 2026 or towards 2026, the World Cup, and then beyond. And I like that ultimately excites me, right? It's why I came over here in 2019 and was really interested in it. And I think we're sort of getting to that fruition now of it actually happening, if that makes sense. When you think Copa America's here this year, there's Club World Cups coming, there's obviously consistent tours here, there's the World Cup coming. It's like, it's going to be an amazing time for the game. And like that excites me because I think I quite like being in and around the city and seeing more of it. So when Messi went to Miami, then I'd be in a bar on a Saturday night and he'd be on TV and people would be watching it. And like that's recognition for the game growing, right? And being more intertwined in society. So like that excites me, and like that with the opportunity to the point on athletes and clubs and stories. I feel that's quite exciting.
Oh yeah. How does it make you feel inside when you see that?
It gets me excited. It's like it makes me not feel like a kid, but it just makes you want to be part of it, right? And get going and do all of those things. Yeah,
that's awesome.
So it's nice.
Where can people find you?
I have LinkedIn. It's just under my name, which is like Stu Gower, and that's basically where anybody can contact me. Yeah.
Yep. So don't contact him on Instagram.
I just don't. I have it, and I look at it and like all of those things, but I'm just not a massive like sharer.
Yep.
Not a massive poster.
You're an absorber.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm going to use that next time anyone says that to me.
I'm just looking at references all the time, just saving shit.
That's exactly
trying
it,
to find
though,
cool
right?
stuff.
I think that's, me and my girlfriend talk about it quite a bit. And it's like, I'm not on it, but I have to, it's good to see how people are using things.
100%.
TikTok, I don't use TikTok, but like, I have to be in a position to be able to understand how brands are using it or what's going on with it. And like, I'm not going to necessarily create my own platform.
You can't execute on it if you don't understand it at all.
And also you have kids and people, I shouldn't say kids, people coming through systems who have grown up with those things now, right? And they're experts in their own right. So like, I don't need to be telling them how to necessarily use TikTok. I can help the story and build the story, but they're amazing on those platforms.
Yeah. All right, man, I tried to smash it through. We're 6 minutes over time. Anything else you want to say, ask, talk about?
No, I think we're good.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. Thank you so much, brother.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.